Right, good afternoon everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, cool, brilliant. My name is Vedat. This session is about vSphere tips and tricks. Again, I come from loads of infrastructure backgrounds, mainly on VMware, and I put some slides together around mainly about capacity planning. I spent a lot of my time before joining VMware with around capacity, forecast and so on and so forth. So I put a few slides together just to share my experience, and hopefully you'll find something useful that can take it away. So I think we've got about 45 minutes today to go through the agenda. So feel free in the end to reach out to me and offline or straight after the meeting, depends how quickly we finish. So this is the agenda today, quick introduction about myself. We'll go through about VMware, it's mainly on-prem capacity planning, and like I said, Q&A. So myself, my name is Vedat. I've been with VMware for 1.5 years now, so I've got over 18 years of experience in IT field, mainly with VMware. So those are my LinkedIn and X or Twitter platform, what they call it nowadays. So just some questions around vSphere capacity. Do you guys use VROps for capacity planning? Okay, cool. So I work, I've got 4 customers assigned to myself. I do spend a lot of time with them as a TAM, helping them also around capacity planning and what can they actually do around capacity without having to put their hands in their pocket and buy the additional hardware. And again, I have successfully implemented this on my previous workplace, and I'll be sharing it with you, some of the ideas I've implemented, and I'm glad to say that has been successfully implemented and now is still working since I've been in contact with you and my colleagues from my previous workplace. No, those are the areas you can basically look at without having a need to buy additional VxRail node or HP node or Cisco, whatever you've got in environment. Right size and virtual machines, so this is something you can look at, are the old virtual machines oversized, undersized, and with the help of VROps, you can look into that and maybe right size them to reclaim some capacity back. Idle VMs and age snapshots, again, those are another areas where you can look into for again, it's free of charge thing where you can just go through the age snapshots and idle VMs. I've got some examples what you can do and how I've done it, and hopefully you'll find that useful. Maybe you can take it away and look into it. Powered on VMs, another one. Workload consolidation. Basically, that means if you have 5 clusters, just making sure the 5 clusters have identical workload, and if not, just consolidate them. And then finally, VM resources and orphan VMs. Again, those are the 2 areas that you can look into and see how you can actually, whether you have any orphan VMs or the virtual machines with reservations on. Right size and virtual machines. So they're basically that, right size and virtual machines, sometimes it can be a challenge. With the experience I had is mainly around trying to convince the business that you have over-spec'd a virtual machine. So my past life, my previous employer, my sort of day-to-day job has kind of been firefighting with architects because the virtual machine has been over-spec'd, and I'm sure you guys would come across the same thing. So those are the 2 areas you can look into. So like I said, oversized virtual machines and the benefits that will bring. Again, what you might want to do with, what you can actually do with oversized virtual machines is, with the help of VROps, it will tell you how many virtual machines are oversized, which I do have an example of a screenshot of the VROps, where it will say, look, you've got 20 virtual machines that have been oversized, and then you can look into a bit more detail. as well as undersized virtual machines. Mainly what this can help you quite a lot is mainly maybe improving the performance on virtual machines. So I'll give you a primary example. With previous employer, we had reoccurring incidents where business critical applications were keep getting alerts and backup failures, so on and so forth. With the help of VROps and proactive work, I have identified those application servers, which were about 5 of them. They were struggling for resources. So what we've done, we've added some additional CPU power, and that improved and reduced the number of tickets, because we had the Ionix auto monitoring system. So basically, the CPU spikes over 80%, it will log a ticket, and because nature of that system, we used to get called out after hours, and then again, that's when undersized virtual machines can help you out. So this is an example of oversized and undersized VM TAM. So this is a screenshot. If I'm sure you guys are familiar if you used area operations or VROps. So this is just a snapshot, basically telling you that okay, this cluster here, it's got allocated 16 CPUs, and in the past month, VROps says you don't really need the 16 CPUs. You can actually reduce it to 8. Now, the way how I approached business with this is I said, look, I'm not going to just go using this example from 16 to 8. I'll do it in control manner. So go from 16 to 14 and so on and so forth. So you just kind of monitor it. Again, here's an example of oversized. This is more kind of overview per cluster. So oversized VM basically just saying to you, you've got 283 VMs that been identified as overspec, and it gives you an idea how much you can actually reclaim back. And again, same thing on the undersized VMs. And using a primary example, like I said, undersized VMs, that was a critical, quite useful to the business, because they would keep getting alerts and slow performance in the system. So because we've done some proactive work, that has enabled to reduce the amount of incidents. Now, as an administrator, you might be sending this report to a manager or head of infrastructure, which I've done the same thing. I'll say, look, I've got X amount of virtual machines that have been overspec. They've got additional 14 CPUs assigned that are not needed. To them, really didn't really make sense. What I had to kind of do was I put a pound sign against it. Okay, so I've calculated how much would a HP blade cost, and then I said, look, you've got 55 virtual machines that have been overspec'd, and that's equivalent to 1 HP blade, and then you just work out the cost of the HP blade. What then that did is that initiated a conversation with the management. So that worked. This method here wasn't working very much. So when I then start putting a pound sign against it, then kind of work them up, because they knew the impact, the financial impact. Again, this is for idle and powered off virtual machines. So again, this is an example I've used and I've implemented it successfully. Is reviewed all the powered off virtual machines that have been powered off more than 50 days. Of course, you want to exclude the standby VMs and DR virtual machines. So here's an example of how basically you look. So you might, actually when I did this 2 months ago for one of my customers, they had about 15 virtual machines that have been powered off for like nearly 400 days. And the amount of storage they had was crazy. So as you can see, this is just an example of what you can do. The sort of the data it gives you, because if a VM's been powered off more than 322 days, you start to question why. Again, this is just a quick admin process that you can actually build in without having to go and buy additional compute. Same example with idle VMs. Again, that 50 days, you might want to change. You might speak to the business. You can say, look, make that 30 days, make that 60 days. 50 days was enough to allow business to basically, it was justifiable to get rid of that VM that was more than 50 days old. Now, what I've done is, because done that manually, what I then did is basically introduce the automated that process. So the way that worked was, we've done a discovery. So I was getting a VROps report every month to show, okay, show me idle or powered off VMs more than 50 days. That report will come in, and basically the cons will go to the service owners or whoever those VMs belong to, and you basically put a change control in to say, look, we are going to shut down or delete those VMs as part of your internal process or VMware standard policy documents that you have. Again, I suggest you, so when you put this in place, I had to get buying from senior management, because then this process just became automated, because sometimes if the business ignores it, then at least you've got a backup, something to back up that you do have an approval to do this work. A snapshot, again, I know snapshots can be very challenging, and it was a challenging for me when I was managing a quite large VMware estate. So snapshots, I don't need to sort of tell you guys what they are and how to identify, but this VM here, so for example, in a GUI way, this is how you would tell when a snapshot is, and it has the disk, normally has load of leading zeros, and it's got the VMDK. You can also determine your snapshots through CLI if you prefer that. So those are the commands you run, and then it will tell you if that virtual machine has a snapshot. Okay, also we have third-party snapshots. So those snapshots are, if you, for instance, use Veeam, or if you use Dell other image level backup. So sometimes those products, what they do is, if they take snapshots and for whatever reason vCenter goes down, it cannot complete the job properly. It will just leave it as consolidated, but it won't tell you that it has failed. Depends how good your backup reporting is. But what it does on VM is just leave this. You probably guys have seen that message in there, disk consolidation needed, and then next day will come in. You just try to do the backup. And yeah, so you just leave a snapshot there. It won't show up in a GUI, but that's the state it leaves. And these are the things that you can actually clean up. I've seen snapshots in this state that have been more than 3 months old. And so we have 5,000 plus VMs. If you time that by amount of megabytes for each VM, that's quite low. Okay. So automate snapshot management. So again, this is what I've put in and successfully worked. So this is what I used to do before putting automation snapshot automatic management, basically. One was basically you get a user or a group of users, they'll go to the vSphere, log on, they'll take a snapshot into one or two VMs. And then what you do is you go to that individual person or a group of users and you question and say, well, have you taken the snapshots, so on and so forth. Then you might get out of office. They'll say, okay, we'll come back in 3 days' time. And then you put another reminder, you send another chaser email, And then before you know it, that snapshot just becomes 20 days old and plus. Okay, and then I used to spend half a day doing that, firefighting with developers. And I said, you know what actually worked in my favor, there was a massive set one on SSM snapshot. So head of infrastructure actually supported me automating the whole end-to-end. So what I've done is basically, so just for that, and then basically this just became like email dialogue, because they would say, oh, I need a snapshot another 3 days, I'm going to have it for 2 more days, and you put a reminder in your diary, but because the department was quite big, you just forget, basically. So how did I achieve that? So what I've done is I had to put a updated documentation to get a sign-off from head of infrastructure. So what I've done is I've updated, we had VMware standard documents and policy documents, and I've said, look, we will automatically delete any aged snapshots older than number of days. So I put 5 days because of bank holiday and everything else. Okay, that was my proposal. And then what I've done is, then I said, okay, send an email to notification to the users, notifying that that snapshot will be deleted on Monday, 2 o'clock. Then, however, if there is a use case where someone will say, look, I actually do need those snapshots because we do loads of app developments, I need them to be excluded. So what I've actually done is I basically created a text file, and if someone needed VMs to be excluded, they put a service request in through Remedy. That will come in, you'll go through myself, and I'll say that's fine, I'll approve that for 2 weeks, add it to that text file, so they will not be deleted. Because I have certain requirements to say, okay, can you please exclude it? What you can also do with this is, which I had to do, I had to exclude the entire vCenter for Citrix team because they were managing their own virtual machines. So you can exclude certain clusters if you want. You can say, look, that cluster belongs to that team. I don't want to take any responsibility because they manage the snapshots. So I had to do the same thing with Citrix. I said to Citrix, that's your vCenter, you manage your capacity. If snapshots grow by terabytes, from selfish point of view, that's your responsibility. And then to sort of set a reminder on exclusion, I've set up a weekly email notification that used to come out every Monday morning, 8 o'clock, to say, here's a list of virtual machines that have been excluded, just as a reminder, because you can forget. And so once I've got that, got the approval, and send the comms out, and basically whoever took a snapshot, this is the email example they used to get, okay, saying this is the email that advises you snapshot, will have the snapshot details, the date, the size, who took it, and says it will be automatically deleted in 48 hours as per VMware standard policy. And then they know that because they manager and everyone else signed up to that policy. If they want it excluded, they can just sort of respond back. But they know the process. If they want something excluded, for the first month or 2, I did struggle, but I had to manually monitor it. But then, with a bit of workshops and training, everyone just got used to it. And that just saved me a lot of time.
Have you got it like shareable or anything that whatever you wrote
Yeah.
there?
It's we didn't have VRA, so I couldn't justify to get VRA to do snapshot deletion, so we had to put a script. Well, I can share the script.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the script has got, you create a text file on your folder like D drive, and I can share that with you.
That's mailing out as well, is it?
Yeah. There's like prerequisites. You have to have mail relay enabled. Your vCenter suggests you have a management VDI or management server where you can put the script in.
Okay.
And you have dedicated service account and that kind of stuff. Okay. Resource reservations, again, this is another area where when I've run the reports, I've seen loads of people having, like putting reservations on a CPU or RAM. Because I had no control over that, who built, it was consuming loads of resources. And it was quite a lot of manual process to kind of chase people. Because what I had to do is if someone built a VM, like VMware, I had to go to the design, make sure if that was by design. But we had a cluster, we had a policy, no resource reservations. If someone wanted resource reservation, they have to put a sort of a special request in. Now, with virtual machine swap files, I don't know how many of you know, but I've used this example here. So if you've got, for instance, a virtual machine with 60 gig of C drive, 100 gig on D drive, and the swap file is 8 gig because of the RAM. So sometimes a lot of people miss this out if you do a sizing. So for example, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to build a brand new cluster, and that cluster will host, let's say, 200 virtual machines. Those 200 virtual machines, in terms of RAM, is 1 terabyte. So that's 1 terabyte of storage if all these VMs got powered on, which sometimes can be easily missed. However, if you put reservation on, that goes away. Same thing if you leave it powered off. So reservation, if you leave a VM powered off, that basically goes away. Or if you put the reservation on, it gets -8. I do have an example to share with you that got me out of the jail on a set 1, and this is how I've done it. So someone was basically they filled up the LUN, and I got called out to say backups were failing, disk consolidations, there was just not enough room, and storage team had issues to extend that LUN so I can consolidate. So what I've basically done is I picked up the largest VMs, put the memory reservation on, so that reduced the storage. I did have enough CPU RAM power, like memory on the cluster, so memory wasn't a problem. So that gave me breathing space, and then I took care of the situation. So just an example. Sometimes reservation can come handy. Again, you can introduce this automated process where you can have a report, basically send that to you. In terms of notification, you can, I don't know, you might want to look into that and then reach out to the people who built the VM and start questioning why did you put the reservation on, or you might want to name and shame, I'm not sure, but yeah. So I did notice, so for example, when we deployed, I don't know if you guys dealt with F5 appliances, like virtual editions. So when you deploy an F5 appliance, by default they put the reservations on. There are certain appliances, certain vendors, they just put the reservation on by default. Okay, workload consolidation. Again, this is another area you can look into and see. Basically, I've just put this picture here just to kind of to demonstrate. So it depends how big your environment, and if you have like a shared workload. In this scenario, you might say, look, these are the 2 clusters. Where can I consolidate? Reduce the footprint on data centers, and then you might want to get rid of the cluster 1 by moving some of the workload across. Again, that depends on how your setup is. If you've got all these clusters presented with the same VLAN. So capacity planning suggests sort of plan ahead 6 to 12 months in advance. Again, if you do have area operations or VROps, you can use the what-if scenario. So what that means, if you're not familiar with that, is you can say, I've got this virtual machine with this existing spec, but I need 50 of them. And then VROps will tell you whether you need additional capacity on compute, storage, and memory. And of course, the DR, again, DR has, it requires its own topic. But what I used to do with disaster recovery is, because we used to use SRM, I just always made sure that site B had sufficient compute in the event of a DR. Okay. Now, here's another example that I had to implement around VM deployments and having that control. So the challenge was, we had loads of teams and departments that would have access to the vCenters. So basically what they would do is they will follow the change control process and do everything by the design, but one thing they'll not do is look at the capacity. Okay, so Unix team, they had a request to build 50 VMs, they'll just go to the vCenter, right-click, new, or use a template, and then deploy. They never check the capacity. And that was a big problem, because one day there was a project that booked in contractors. Well, basically they reserved the space 7 months in advance, because people had been building a building. When the time came for the project to consume the capacity, it was not sufficient. So we had to do loads of vMotion around just to free up the space for the project. Now, what I had to do, I thought, let's do this in 2 phases. Put like kind of the gatekeeper in there. Put the vSphere capacity management dashboard in. So I thought, what's the simplest way that I can make this easier for all these guys? Because some of the guys, for example, no disrespect, but some of the Unix team that we had, some of the guys didn't have so much experience with VMware. So doing a capacity report on how much CPU, RAM, you'll just confuse things, because it was all on HCI, basically CPU storage and compute all in one box. Now I came up with this model, like traffic light system. Okay, so basically what I've done is this. I'll put different workloads, so SQL for example, and you've got Oracle and shared platform. So a Wintel engineer will get a request that says, okay, can you build a SQL server? First thing they'll do is go to this dashboard and look at which cluster they can actually build it on. Okay, it was very simple. They knew it that if any cluster had basically green, capacity-wise, CPU, RAM, or storage up to 64%, just build, don't ask anyone. Okay. The next one was basically consult before you build. If the cluster was orange and red was like no. Okay. What this allowed me to do was, I had a project request who said, Vedat, I need this cluster for a designated project. So I marked it red. Even though capacity was free, I just highlighted as red. No one built it. So don't build there. And this really, really worked. All of this was an Excel spreadsheet as a phase 1, just to put that control in place. And then phase 2 of the project was to basically introduce it with VROps. Okay, this helped massively, because all the EUC team, Unix app developers will go in and look at this and says, okay, I need to build the Oracle box, and because I'll just deploy on a green one. In the first couple of weeks I did struggle, but I've managed that because I did a workshop when we gone live. I was doing hold handing for a couple of weeks. Did email notifications. So what that means was, if someone built a box, on the wrong cluster, I'll just go and advise them to say, look, you built in the wrong cluster, you should have done that. And also what this helped us quite a lot was because we had a few incidents where some SQL boxes were built on Oracle clusters, and as you're already aware, Oracle are they don't like having things on a shared platform, so from licensing point of view, we would have been on a breach. So this helped quite a lot. So again, maybe this is something that you can look into. It might work for you, it might not, but again, it's just an idea and experience that I thought I'll share. And it has been successful because everyone used it. And now basically the way I calculated this is just basically a screenshot from the vCenter when you select the cluster. So what I've done was I've looked at each cluster and I calculated the capacity n-1. So it was a bit of a manual work, but we had a control in place. And when a new cluster were coming on board, so I'll add a new cluster in here, marked as in red because we were building, so we didn't want any engineers to build stuff, so that would have prevented it. So, yeah. So in summary, I think it's just coming to an end. Again, these are the areas that you can look into and basically reclaim some of the capacity back without having to buy additional hardware. I had a customer who was buying some additional VxRail node. Of course, they loved it. So I worked with one of the IT guys. So somehow by default, because they had the script, they always built in cluster 1. So cluster 2 was like empty. But because they had the script, they never bothered to update it. They just had a script that build on cluster 1, build on cluster 1. And all I had to do was just then updated the script. So then I start deploying in cluster 2 now. So simple as that. These are some useful links around capacity. And that's it. Any questions? I'll share the catch up with you. I can share the script for VM for the snapshots.
I found the best way to keep control of capacity is to not give anyone access to vCenter or stop the create VM. In the roles, how you can be granular.
Okay.
No one's got permission to create a VM apart from automation scripts, and then someone's got to go to a dashboard and then the only thing that can create a VM is by an automation script that goes through a workflow process. So
a couple of years ago, before implementing that, I was part of a lifecycle team of maintenance. So the previous manager said, look, we have to do the VM deployment, so we have control over that. And guess what? All these departments start bombarding us. Oh, create me a VM, please. 2 NICs, 10, and we just create more work for ourselves, basically. So then we stopped that, and then we had asked people to fill in a SharePoint site. We created a SharePoint where people put in spec VM. It was just so much admin overhead. So we stopped that.
People will complain when all the other VMs are running slow because they've over deployed it.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's backwards all the time.
Yeah, but yeah, I just thought maybe something different, kind of real life experience, and I do share this with with my customers and whoever else needs it. So yeah. Then
previous slide.
This one.
Yes, please. This one.
Oh, sorry.
The one with the references. That one.
Yeah.
How do you define an idle VM?
Thank you very much.
Because a VM can just be sat there and just host one web page for something, but it doesn't do much.
So what I used to do was on a VR ops, so there's I'll just bring it back here, sorry. There's an option.
Sorry, I should ask you.
No, it's fine. Sorry. So on the VR Ops, you get this, so it will tell you how long this virtual machine has been idle, and then how much capacity it has.
But how's it defining that that's idle?
Oh, basically
it's
it's
serving one web page that gets access once a week, but it needs to be there.
well, this is what I'm saying is you can exclude the standby and the DR VMs. So, give you an example, we had SRM. So I had SRM cluster in site A and site B. So I excluded the SRM cluster. We had like SQL boxes. So you had node 1, node 2. So I was, on the exclusion list, I said anything N, which was a cluster, exclude it. But then this is when this goes back to that automated process where you can start questioning it. And if you do find some VMs that may be just there to be used once in a while, you can just exclude it.
You can configure it now in your ops as well, the network usage and memory usage and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
If you're organising tag stuff, can you use tagging in the queries as well?
Yeah. I mean, if you put tagging in, it just makes your life so much easier because you can just tag the SRM cluster, for example. So yeah, like we for us it was quite easy to do the exclusion because of naming convention we use. So for SQL it was like CL node 1 cluster 1. So you can just say exclude anything with CL, for example. Yeah, hope you've found this useful and maybe give you some room for thoughts. And yeah, hopefully when you go back, you might revisit this. Cool. Thank you.